In this section, we are going to go over my favorite tips on body positioning. I obviously do not want to overdefine how we move our body, as this would stifle freedom of expression and creativity. Instead, I will share some of the discoveries that I have made over the past few years that have radically improved my own precision and grace. Feel free to disregard any of this information and move however feels most free and comfortable. While you are working on this section, it would be ideal to already have a grasp on the following tutorials. Before we pick up our rope dart, let's do a quick experiment. Let's imagine a string at the top of our head that is pulling us up. Are we able to stand taller? Now let's check that our shoulders are not rounded too far forward or back. They are straight. We can check this by looking at our side view from a mirror. Finally, we check our feet. Are they pigeon-toed? Mine often are. This is dangerous because it can lead to serious knee injuries. There are pivots and turns that require short moments of toe pigeoning. But when we are not executing those specific moves, it is important not to allow our feet to point at each other. Now that we have done a quick scan to make sure that our body has good general posture, let's talk about how it presents itself during rope dart moves. The most important thing to start drilling from the very beginning is that our whole body needs to be pointed in the correct plane during a move. This means our face, our torso, and our feet. In every tutorial that I have created, I make sure to define what plane we are in. The more advanced the move, the more likely it will be to change planes multiple times during a single move. However, we must always make sure that each plane change is done precisely. That is the key to executing the move correctly and gracefully. Let us take the elbow shot as a great example of how our body's plane can influence the precision and grace of a move. Here is a quiz for you. Can you tell which elbow shot is better? If you answered the second one, you are correct. In the first version, notice how the rope dart itself was spinning in the correct plane, but how my body's angle is slightly off. Although I have exaggerated the difference for maximum comprehension, I notice that the angles of my body are sometimes off in less pronounced ways. The reason that this is a problem is because these incorrect angles will affect the accuracy of our shots. Also, from a performer's perspective, there is a subtle communication that we are inadvertently making when we do not commit to the correct plane. The message reads, "I am shooting my rope dart out, but I am not paying enough attention to line my body up with my target." The effect can look sloppy and lazy. It dilutes the power of the shot. Sidebar. I would be the first to concede that this is an extremely overly opinionated and rigid rule to be enforcing, so please take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. However, I will finish my point by saying that it took me 2 years to notice that I was making this mistake, and that as soon as I started paying more attention to the plane of my body, my shots became miraculously more accurate and sharp. Moving on. Also on the topic of the orientation of our body, I think it is important to address the difference between a martial stance and a performer stance. In the case of the martial artist, our stance is going to be dictated based on the position of our opponent. The goal will be to often face our opponent and position ourselves in a way that would be advantageous for a fight. In order to do so, a martial artist's home position is in wheel plane. When it comes to performing and dance, our stance needs to be different since our objective is to connect with our audience rather than to win a fight. I think this is actually why it is very common for dartists to accidentally position their bodies in between planes. They are struggling with a subconscious conflict. I should be doing this move in wheel plane, but I should also be pointing my body at the audience. There is an easy solution to this problem. Throughout the next chapters, we are going to learn a bunch of moves in wall plane, allowing us to face our audience more often. Body tracers, triketras, sunrises, stalls, etc. will allow us to make eye contact with our audience, establishing a connection. This stance is helpful not just in the case of performing, but also in general for flow artists, because it will diversify our flow so that we're not just doing a bunch of shots back to back. I will be covering these moves in the next chapters, but in the meantime, let's start thinking about what kind of body movement will help accentuate our style. The flow arts community is only just beginning to brush the surface of what is possible when it comes to rope dart flow. As more and more people join this growing movement, more styles are beginning to emerge. There are martial artists, of course, but now there are also fairy rope dartists, sexy fierce feminine rope dartists, crazy tech head rope dartists, playful clown dartists, zen ninja rope dartists, and every hybrid in between. I believe this is the best part about the flow arts community. Anyone can create their own unique style that is custom made to fit their own personality. But how do these characters and personas express themselves? The answer is through the details of body movement. We can start developing our style or persona by asking ourselves two questions. What moves am I most visually drawn to? And what kind of character would I like to play if I had the choice? For example, I am often drawn to the loose character of sexy warrior. I like my moves to look lethal and precise, but I also have a feminine way of carrying myself. This very loose persona has helped me decide which moves I want to focus on, and has also helped me come up with some moves of my own. I noticed that I am more recently developing multiple personas, so that I don't get bored or pigeonholed. Sometimes I feel like I have a fairy alter ego, which comes out when slower music is played. So, our homework is to play around with some character ideas. Sidebar: please only do this exercise if you feel drawn to it. Our goal is not to overanalyze ourselves or put ourselves in a box. This is just an exercise that has helped inspire me over the years, and that is the reason I'm sharing it. Okay. All we have to do is come up with 2 or 3 words that might help us visualize a potential character. For example, sexy warrior fairy. Next, we write down some ideas of how each persona might express themselves through body movement. Here is a table I came up with using my own persona. Finally, I have made a short list of some of my favorite random tips to help with body movement. Number 1. A lot of people ask me how to do pirouettes. I truly believe that there are many ways to do pirouettes, and that forcing ourselves to do them exactly the way someone else does them might inadvertently stifle creativity. I have added a link in the description of a video that shows how to do a classical ballet pirouette in case you are curious. I do not execute a classic ballet pirouette, and I do not think one would be ideal for spinning rope dart. Here is the pirouette that I came up with that works best for me. I extend one of my legs and cross it over the other leg I'm standing on. Then, I whip my first leg around and use the momentum to pivot the foot that I'm standing on. Once I have pivoted 180 degrees, I raise my turning leg until it is at a 90-degree angle and bend it completely. This motion will help finish the turn, and I should land in the same place I started, having rotated 360 degrees. Sometimes I pivot on my toes, sometimes on my heel. I just turn the way that feels most graceful and stable to me, even though it's not correct in terms of classic ballet. I think it looks best to point the toes of the foot that we are not standing on. We can do this movement with either foot. Number 2. One of the biggest issues I have had when it comes to awkward body movement is the way my elbow sticks out during certain moves. I have noticed other people have issues with this topic as well. I have spent months and months overanalyzing the movements and shapes my elbows make to the point of unhealthy obsession. Here is my conclusion. If we are executing an elbow shot or spin, our wrist has to be close to our armpit. If it's not, the movement will just look awkward and weird. If we are executing an elbow shot, our elbow also has to be at a 90-degree angle. Even though this is the way I originally learned and teach the move, I have noticed that my elbows droop down unless I am paying close attention, creating a really odd looking angle. Once again, this is probably way too detailed and over-opinionated, but I really feel that my shots are 100% more accurate when I have that perfect 90-degree angle and my wrist is close to my armpit. Number 3. I feel that it is extremely important to be expressive and agile with our body. Exaggerating our body's movements can really add a lot to the visual aesthetic of our flow. In contrast, standing in the same spot with our feet close together can look boring. Turning, crossing our legs as we move, lunging, and keeping our feet moving in general will bring significantly more energy and drama to the movement. Okay, we have gotten through the last intro tutorial. In order to fully apply the knowledge we have just learned, it would be ideal to continue to drill each of the moves suggested in the beginning of this chapter while asking ourselves the following questions. Are my planes off in any way? How does this move fit into the style and persona that I am slowly starting to develop? How can I make this move more refined? Drill it, change it, exaggerate it? Throughout the next classes, we will start tackling moves that are being taught for the first time on this tutorial series. Please do not move on until you are feeling somewhat comfortable with all of the tutorials listed above. Remember, it's not about doing the hardest moves or about how many moves you know. It's about doing each move well. That is what makes a graceful rope artist.